Quiet. Welcome back to another episode of Pest Prospectives. It's the official podcast of the Pest Pros of Michigan. Squirrels. They're nice and cuddly and they look friendly, and you can even watch reels and videos online where they're people's pets. Can they really be pests? Here to help us answer that question is Ian Woodruff, lead wildlife specialist, one of the Pest Pros of Michigan. Ian, hi there.
How are we doing, Richard?
Doing great. And, really, when we look around at squirrels, they look really sweet and harmless. Can they really be pests?
Absolutely. There are many different ways that squirrels can be pests. You can have the most annoying sound in the nighttime. You can see them just jumping from tree to tree, coming to your house, and then wondering, hey, are they actually getting into my house? There's many, many different ways.
All right. So really, it's understanding their habitat, right? They're always looking for food, and then they're also looking for a warm place to stay, probably just like the rest of us, right?
Yes, absolutely. Main three things is food, shelter, water with any sort of pest or any sort of vertebrate at that.
Yeah. So they really are
matter.
trying to sneak in, right? They're trying to make their way in somewhere. What are they looking for? What is inviting to them?
Basically, exactly what you said is a really warm place to stay, a warm place where they can just kind of huddle down and do their own thing, store their food cache. I've had something where I've gone up into an attic and seen piles upon piles of walnuts in an attic. An entire half section of insulation was gone because a squirrel decided to take some up into a tree. I could go on and on about all the experiences I've had.
So how do they get in?
Mainly through trees. So if you are in a very foresty, wooded area, then if you have trees hanging over your house, they'll climb up the trees, jump right onto your house. They'll either get into your dormers or eave returns, because sometimes over time the metal can separate from the shingles and they can just slip right under there. The main ones that we deal with are red squirrels that become really bad pests. They will just chew an entire hole on the side of the siding and get in that way. Basically take the worst area that you want to get to, and that's going to be your entry point for a red squirrel.
Are they as sneaky as, say, mice, which, they can pretty much flatten themselves and get through some tiny little space? Are squirrels as flexible and agile as that?
When it comes to like jumping off of different things, yes. So like you're not going to expect a mouse to jump like 2 feet from a branch to a house, but with squirrels, they'll make that jump. And so what they'll do from there then is they'll find wherever the easiest point is, and they'll follow that route over and over and over again until it's plugged up. So path of least resistance is always a good key to remember.
All right. So they're looking for, as you say, some things to make life comfortable. And maybe it is the insulation. Maybe it's some other things that are up there in the attic. What do they really want? They want insulation? What do they need?
The food, the water. If something is very plentiful, they're going to keep going back and getting it. So let's say we go up into an attic and we see a squirrel just hanging out there. They're going to exit the house once in a while to grab either food, stuff to cache in their little house, and then water to also get when they need to. And so that's really what they're looking for, is just kind of a place to hunker down and settle down and, mate and have their babies and just kind of live their lives. In their house, we don't really want them to.
Yeah, right. We'd love for them to be comfortable, but not making holes in our houses to try to get in. What other kind of damage can they cause?
Electrical damage. So people have had loss of power because squirrels will chew in the electrical. There was a video on Facebook that I watched that a squirrel started a house fire because the electrical was sparking and it caught basically the house on fire. And so those type of things can happen if we don't take care of the squirrel problem. Sometimes you'll have those cases where people's cars and other things will have squirrels get into them. And the main reason for that is, and I don't know if you've heard this before, some of the newer cars, The electrical wiring used to be the regular rubber product, and they used to wrap it in rubber. And
Hmm.
so the rubber that they're making now is made out of a soy material. So like your European cars, like your Audis, your Hondas, anything like that will have that soy wiring coating to it. And it's very enticing to different rodents, especially squirrels. So we've gotten calls for people taking their cars into the repair shop over and over again. And lo and behold, it's the squirrel that keeps coming back.
So that soy covering has a flavor they like.
Yes, it's like a very nutty flavor. And I mean, you can't taste it yourself, but I can only assume.
Yeah, it tastes like filet mignon to them or something. Yeah. I had a cat once who loved to chew on power cords, and this was a long time ago, so I know it wasn't soy, but I just presumed he liked the way it felt sinking his teeth into those things. He wasn't eating it, he was just chewing it. Do they actually eat the wire? They clearly, if they're causing fires, they might be cutting right through it.
They're yes, I don't think they're eating the wires. It goes along with the soy material, so those wires could taste very plentiful for them or very good to them, and so they'll actually eat the wire and they'll
Yeah.
eat it like a normal nut, and so they'll cut right through the wire, and then the wire starts sparking, and that's what could start your fire.
Sure. They like the taste of that, and they might be thinking they're eating a nut they brought from outside.
Exactly.
Yeah. So how do you get them out? What's the approach when you get a call like this and you see their squirrels that have managed to get in and they made themselves comfortable? How do you handle it?
There's many different ways that you can handle it. It goes based on the species. Here at Pest Pros, we mainly like to humanely remove animals as much as possible.
Sure.
But red squirrels we do with lethal traps. It's very hard to live trap a red squirrel because they are very persistent. And so when we go out to a house, we'll take a look at your eave returns, your dormer sections, anything under the foundation. Like I said, with the trees, take into account any trees hanging over the house. If it's wood siding is a very, very good way for squirrels to get inside to a house. Same thing with brick siding. It's very plentiful here in Michigan. And so when it comes to that, we'll set a trap basically on the main hole that we find and we'll close up all the other holes and we'll make that one trap the only way they can go through. And that's what we like to call a positive set. So when they come out of that, they'll get hit. When they try to go back through it, they'll get hit. And then it all depends on where it's kind of at.
What is it about red squirrels that make it more difficult?
It's just their genetics and their nature. They're much smarter than the other squirrels,
Oh
and
my.
so they kind of know their way around a little bit more. Fox squirrels and black squirrels are going to be your normal, just ones that hang around, and they do get into houses, but they're not going to go out of their way to get into a house.
Oh.
Red squirrels, on different hand, will like to get into houses. It's just something that we've noticed over time that the insulation, that there's something that they like about it.
Well, we like it too because it keeps us warm. So there you are, red squirrels. How common, and I'm not looking for numbers, I'm just curious, how common is it for squirrels to get into buildings and make themselves comfortable? I just heard you say that the average squirrels are less likely to do that, but the red ones are more crafty. Is this a big problem in Michigan?
Yes, we do get a fair few amount of calls, especially during the summertime. This past summertime, we've gotten an overflux of red squirrel calls. This
Hmm.
wintertime, we've gotten some red squirrel calls, but there's not really been much that we've had, at least in my experience that I've done this winter. I don't know what my other colleagues have done, but definitely a fair few amount of calls for
Yeah.
red squirrels.
So even in the summer, when you'd think they'd be just happy being outside in the warm air, they're trying to get in then too.
Yes.
So seasons tend not to matter. They
Um,
still want to visit a nice, comfortable spot.
More of the summertime, it's more has to do with the pheromones. So if you have lots of red squirrels getting into a house, they'll follow that pheromone trail and then they'll smell their other squirrel friends and
Yeah.
then they'll get into the same house that they are. So in my experience, there can be about up to 3 red squirrels in a house at a time. Usually they're pretty territorial, so you're not going to find much more than red squirrels up in one house. I've seen red squirrels fighting flying squirrels in an attic before.
Wow.
Yeah, they are very,
Okay.
very territorial.
Well, We humans tend to be territorial about our houses too. Sorry,
Fair
red
enough.
squirrels. Yeah, we want to know if they're there. How do we usually find out they're there? Is it noise?
Yes. Most of our calls have just been because they hear this loud, obsessive, it just goes on and on every single night, every single day, just running around, getting nuts, and being the most annoying thing ever. The second most common is just finding walnuts. People have found walnuts in their house, in their living spaces, in their basement. Flyers, we also deal with here in Michigan, are another ones that get into people's houses. The main, very fictitious flying squirrels. I've had people say that, well, I've never even heard of a flying squirrel. I'm like, yeah.
So they really fly?
They more glide than fly. But yes, I like to say that they fly sometimes, just as a little joke.
I see. All right. Well, if they get in, it doesn't matter whether they fly or not. They're in the way, and we want to deal with them. Are there other indicators? Can we walk around our house and spot what might be inviting to a squirrel?
So there's not really a way to tell if there's like something inviting, but if you look around your house, if you see it looks like a D shape. They're chewing more looks like a D shape than a normal circle, and it's very rugged and it looks like something's basically rounded out something, or like you've just carved out a hole.
I see.
And another thing is called sebum, and it's the grease staining that any rodent leaves when they go into a hole multiple times. So it'll look like a little brown staining. It'll kind of look like oil, but it's actually the sebum stuff that they're using to get in and out. That's another way of telling that something is getting into your house.
Right. So you're probably going to hear the noise first. And then if you go investigate, you might see these kinds of entry points, shall we say, that are their gateway to your house. All right. So when you get called to investigate such a thing, you're going to do the same thing, right? You're going to look for these things. And then what?
And then we'll basically give them a detailed plan about what we're going to do. So let's say that they're getting into a fascia piece, which is the metal piece that goes on the front of your house to make that little peak. And so we'll tell them, hey, we're probably going to need to set a positive set trap on that hole there. And then we'll close off all the other holes. And then when we come out, we'll take that off. And then we'll put a brand new fascia, put a brand new metal piece up. And it looks like it was never there.
Okay, you'll even do the finishing work.
Yes.
How often do you have to check it? I mean, you put the trap there, and then how long generally does it take?
Daily. If we don't get anything in the trap, either the day of or the next day, we have to keep going out daily to kind of check everything. There are two ways we can do that. The customer checks them themselves. They can go out and they look out and they'll see something trapped in there. It's harder for us to get out there every single day because we've got the other jobs and everything like that.
Then you take it away when it's there. Probably doesn't take long, I would think.
No, it takes about, in my experience, the longest I've had was about a week to catch a squirrel.
Okay. That's a decent amount of time. If you've closed all the other entry points, if there are any.
Sometimes they'll hunker down a little bit because they know red squirrels can be kind of trap shy. So there are times where I've had a trap go off, but nothing has been in the trap. And that's them kind of being sneaky and accidentally setting the trap and then running back into the house.
I'd be a little trap shy too, were I they? I get it. All right. So this is what you can expect if you have issues with squirrels, and the Pest Pros of Michigan are ready to take your call. And maybe it'll be Ian who drops by and helps set up this plan and then carry it out to make sure that the problem is eliminated. Thank you, Ian. We understand how this works now, and we're ready to anticipate what comes next. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Ian Woodruff here, lead wildlife specialist at Pest Pros on Pest Perspectives.